is going on, everybody? Welcome in to the North End Podcast, episode 128. My name is Zach Graham, your host here in the North End, joined, as always, by my good buddy. He's on record as my best friend. His name is Ian Micho, and we call him
E.
He's sitting here on a Sunday afternoon, a little blustery outside. A little blustery in my head right now. I know right before we hit record here, you said, all right, time to be sad again. That's the lead into me asking, how you feeling today, my friend?
I mean, it's a lot of emotion right now. You know, my regular life is going pretty well. I'm doing well on that side, but my fanhood side is as low as it has been in a very long time. There's not much to be excited about, not much to be happy about, not much to be pleased with the product that we have out there on the field. And, you know, it's just a difficult time to be a fan of this team right now. There's really not much to look to draw on from what we've had out there on the pitch as of late, or, you know, extending back even 20 games. So it's a real struggle right now. And I know that, you know, I'm frustrated. Everyone's frustrated. And, you know, looking towards the summer window and all that stuff is great perspective, you know, but I'm not thinking about that when I'm watching us pass the ball backwards 1,500 times, you know, in a matchup versus an Orlando City club. So it's tough, man. It's really tough sledding right now. And I know it's bad. It's just flat out bad. And we are not good.
Yeah, we'll have plenty of discussion here about the overall takeaways and feelings during and after last night's match. And like I told you, this is the least amount of notes I've had on a game in an episode rundown, I think, since we have started. So we'll get through all that. I have just as many, if not more, notes on things, on stats and press conference quotes and overall thoughts and frustrations and what have you. So we'll get into all of that. More of a therapy session than anything here today, which has been what we're doing on Sundays much more frequently than we should be over the last however many months. Before we do get into today's episode, I want to remind you all to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast, because if you're not getting any joy out of Austin FC on game days, hopefully the North End Podcast is providing you some sort of uplifting on your Sundays, your Wednesdays, any day in between. Any of that we would appreciate if you could do for us. And of course, the same stuff applies if you're watching on the YouTube channel. Hitting that subscribe button helps us grow the podcast. Hitting that notification bell will let you know when a live stream pops up or a new episode goes live. And of course, on this episode, hit the thumbs up button. Like the video, help us battle the YouTube algorithm overlords, which you can also do by leaving a comment and joining in on the conversation. So any and all of that you do for us, we would appreciate. Atone for your sins, wash yourselves clean in the tears of the North End. Out in Orlando last night, we had our official, not just videographer in the North End, but now our road correspondent and Uncle Dave out there, not able to make the trip with him, but coming in. Obviously, we got the injury report. No surprises there. No Vicenen, no Kolmanich, and then Danny and Julio each out on international duty. And we got on Thursday's media availability word from Coach Wolf that Seba expected to start unless something unexpected came up between Thursday and kickoff. So that was a bit of positivity headed into the weekend. And then we get the lineup and confirmation that Seba is getting the start. But a couple of other things in between. We got 2 short-term loan agreement call-ups from Jimmy and Antonio Gomez. And then Coach Wolf said in the media availability, we had 14 field players available from the first team, which meant, are we really not taking other guys who are under contract with the first team or giving some short-term loan agreements out and completing this bench? No, we were not. So starting 11, Stuver, Gallagher, Hedges, Heinous in there for Julio, Guilherme Biru on the left, Johan, Alex, Seba, Finley, Rubio, Obrian. So a couple takeaways from the starting 11, but I want to begin with the bench, which is not filled out. And I understand certain coaching moves, whether it's like looking at Fcito in the Open Cup match. Pino gets the red card, screws us in that opening match, benched, for that next one a couple days later. I get the disciplinary type of things. I get, that there are reasons why you do this. It still doesn't make me happy as a fan. Similar to putting Driussi on the bench when he can't play 2 weeks ago. The fact we're not even bringing a guy like CJ or a guy like Micah Burton, even if they're not going to play in this match, the experience, having them around their teammates, all of that. We're not a small college program that has to worry about, we got to pay for an extra hotel room for these guys. Mm-hmm. We got cash. That's not a worry. So not filling out this bench to me was a frustration, to say the least.
I mean, it's a testament to how thin we are and how limited we are, but also a mistake and a mishap. Like, again, the Seba being on the bench a couple weeks ago, not actually able to play, it's a mistake. It's just a bad look. And then you go ahead and lose these games. Like, if we win, we're not talking about, not filling out this bench really, but like, it just adds to the level of frustration that the current state of this team is in. Like, we are just in a really bad spot right now. And I'm with you there, man. Like, it's just low key kind of embarrassing to not be able to fill out this bench with guys that, we think might not necessarily get a chance, but deserve a chance. I understand the experience aspect of being there with the boys and all that, but we are just scratching the bottom of the barrel looking for anything. And I'm with you. I disagree with not filling out the roster entirely.
Well, look, there's so many things that can and probably do go on behind the scenes at practice, in the locker room, in one-on-ones, in video breakdowns, whatever, where a player could say something sideways. Okay, well then you're being a shithead. You're not coming on this trip, or you're doing this. Then X happens. Like, so we don't know those in-between type of things. But again, just on the surface, it's not like Fcito played a game this weekend. Mm-hmm. They're off till Thursday. Mm-hmm. So again, and I'm not saying, like, I'm not advocating that Jimmy or CJ or Micah or any of these Fcito guys should get into that match last night. But again, I just think there's more positives than negatives to filling out that bench, having those bodies there, and at the very least, getting those young guys more time doing these road trips, being around what it takes, what goes into that first team away trip and game day and preparation and all of that. And so again, I'm probably making a bigger deal out of this than it needs to be, but it's just those little fringe things that I feel like we could do a better job at while we wait through and try to hang on during this rebuild period, which it was called for the first time by name a rebuild by Coach Wolf after the match.
I mean, these things get magnified when you're losing. They get a microscope placed over them and really get highlighted when you're shit, which we have been, which is just pure shit. And like we've been told and looked at the Fcito team with the idea that this is a growth and development club. So like, why are we not growing and developing them in this regard? It's just all bad right now, man.
And then talking about that starting group, we did see a couple changes. Obviously, Seba back in there with the armband. You see Heinous in there to fill in for Julio. And then Emmy on the bench again. So did you have any thoughts there? Ethan Finley back in the 11, opposite side of Hader Obrian. And of course, Jesse Zardes off the bench once again with Diego Rubio up top.
Yeah, I mean, you get the starting lineup and you see Tens in there. You can't help but be a little bit excited about that. And I was, and I was on record for the preview for this pod feeling like we had a real opportunity to go in here and at least get some sort of result. And you see this Orlando club in the first half, and they're not really doing shit to us, and everything still is dictated on their terms, their pace, the opponents, what their game plan is, their strategy is. So, I saw the lineup and I felt encouraged. And I also said I thought Rigoni was going to start, and it's fine that he doesn't. Like, he has not provided a single shred of evidence to give him some sort of validity to being in the first 11. There's just nothing to do with it. And it's not like the guys in front of him are playing out of their minds. There's all kinds of opportunity to get minutes here if you can at least be fucking serviceable, which we just are lacking dudes who are serviceable MLS talent right now.
Yeah, and before we get into the match, I did hear from somebody who I won't name because it's just a rumor, and I don't know if they didn't say it publicly, so I don't know if they want this out there. But I heard rumors that the injuries to Kolmanic and Leo Väisänen could be more long term than has been led on from the team so far. So obviously that's not good to hear. A little bit of smoke coming out in that fashion, kind of through a game of telephone, but what I heard nonetheless.
I mean, the Kolmanic injury couldn't have come at a worse time right now. Like, as we moved into this international duty kind of break, losing Julio and losing Danny here, it's like it was just really poor time, and there's nothing you can do about that. And the type of injuries that both of those dudes are dealing with are longer term stuff. Like plantar fasciitis, you can't move. Like, you can't run.
Josh said on Thursday he now refers to it as torn plantar fascia, which is way different.
That's way different than dealing with like a flare up in your plantar fascia.
That's like a we'll see in the fall.
Yeah, exactly. That's you could miss the whole season. Yeah.
Well, let's get into this one here. First minute, we were kind of chuckling a little bit at Dagger Dan Thorhalson on the other side, not just because of his name. We did that, 2 years ago. But Dagger Dan, very dangerous in this one, not in the first minute, because he takes off with the ball towards his own net for a good 15, 20 yards there. And then he went down shortly thereafter after he got pinged in the face. And we thought, oh, maybe he's concussed. Is that why he was going the wrong way? No, on the rewatch, he gets hit in the face after he made that move the opposite direction. So, look, we know, of course, better than most teams that sometimes you go backwards in soccer, but that was a very interesting move. Then he takes a hit, goes down in the first minute, ends up staying in. And that ended up being unfortunate for us. And I wish that guy had gotten a concussion because he was not even, and we should also talk about their lineup.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't even top 3 in terms of guys we should or were worried about once that game got started. But it would have been a lot better for us if he went out early.
Yeah, no, he definitely gave us some issues. I was baffled at that play that he had. I legitimately thought that I had forgotten which direction we were going.
Yeah. He was driving. He wasn't just like, holding off a defender.
Yeah, it was interesting. But yeah, he was a threat all night and he gave us issues.
Yeah, and talking about their lineup, obviously the big storyline was we're missing our guys to injury and international duty. They're missing even more to international duty, but I don't think I put it together in my head. And again, I predicted the 1-0 loss. I thought it would come a little bit later in the match with us more worn down. And you could probably make that argument for the time the first goal comes. But then I look at the lineup when it comes out for them, and it's like, Jesus Christ, man, these guys are missing all the names we talked about. Their best player in Torres, their keeper, who is, a national team level keeper. Galese, top half for sure in the league. Duncan McGuire out of there. But you're still rolling out Nico Ladero, who was Seattle's best player still last year as the 2 seed in the West. Now on a non-DP deal there. Luis Muriel, who just came over from Atalanta and hasn't gotten his first goal yet, but just the talent that guy has. And then Martin Ojeda, who is still a DP for them and an actual DP, even though he's, not a top 10 designated player in the league, still, I think, above average and certainly better than our average. So these guys were way more dangerous even still. And I think that points to the idea that, having that good, solid, common sense type of roster build leads you to have a team and have depth like that, even where I don't think they're getting a ton out of their academy. Even though they do get Mr. Next Pro most goals ever, gets his first MLS goal last night. I'm getting ahead of myself, but man, even with all those guys out, that doesn't even they did not feel shorthanded to me during the match.
Even with all those guys out there, a better team than us. It's just our foundation for the way we built this roster and the talent that we have is completely defunct. Yeah. We're in several different group chats with several different, fan friends that were.
Funny how they bleed into each other sometimes, right?
Yeah. And it's just like, when 2 of your 3 DPs are Rigoni and Alex Ring, man, you're just not going to be fucking good. Like, we're getting absolutely nothing out of those 2. And
we don't get anything out of the U22s, which is why we have Alex Ring as a DP in the first place.
Yep, it's ridiculous. And then like I said before, you see this you get this lineup. It's like you're excited about the return of 10, but it's like he's going to have to throw on 6 capes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a face mask, everything to perform the heroics that we would need to just make up for the lack of talent that we have. And like, this is not an excuse for the coaching staff or anything, because everyone is in on how bad this is. This is a collective effort of shit from top to bottom, and like everyone's responsible for it. There's dirt, blood, whatever you want to call it, on every single person's hands in that organization right now. And again, I hinted at it before, like talking about this match earlier, like it's great to think about the summer window and Dessler coming and potential other big name coming and all those things, but we can only be in the moment, and we can only be in these games that come, twice a week, once a week, whatever, duration we're going to get throughout this season. You can only be in those games at that time, and saying, oh, we'll be better in the summer doesn't help us in the game. It's not something that we can fall back on. And, we can throw all kinds of excuses at it. And some of them valid, some of them not valid, but at the end of the day, it doesn't fucking matter. You got to win games. You got to get points somehow. And it's not even just the lack of winning games and getting points. It is the demonstration of clearly being worse than these teams and not generating any sort of coherent offense. Like, there's so many times in this game where we have open space and there's just nobody there, and we can't get the ball. We can't advance the ball to 10 to actually get him some touches in some dangerous spaces. And it's just really bad right now. And there's not a quick fix coming. Like, there's nothing that's going to happen up until that summer window where this team is going to drastically be able to turn this around, in my opinion. So, we're just going to have to keep slugging through it and just like really trucking through this mud, man. It's rough.
Yeah, they certainly haven't given us much to, cling to so far, especially after last night. But look, after the rewatch this morning, I will say, especially in this first 10 minutes, right? I think Austin was doing a decent job with possession compared to what we've seen over the first 4 games, at least with the shape, right, in the build-up off the goal kicks. And I think, like, even in midfield, right? But it's still the struggle in that final third. Like, the only way, really in the first half hour, the only way that we're approaching the final third is still with those hopeful long balls over the top. And I thought Ethan Finley had maybe a couple runs in behind that were cheeky, and I think, worthy of a little bit of applause there if you were sitting by the pitch. But I thought Obi took a little bit of a step back. It didn't seem like his connection with Seba was quite there yet, which, again, there's a couple excuses I think this team and the coach are leaning on that I don't necessarily buy into with this many games under our belt. I'm fine with that, with the chemistry of Driussi and the new guys not quite being there yet, because he still hasn't played a full 90 in the regular season. But again, on top of all of this, Orlando is not doing anything. They are not being aggressive on either side of the ball. They're not pressing us. They're conceding space, and they're daring us to try to build up into that final third. And they were trying to they were letting us have the ball, which, oh man, it's demoralizing the day after. I mean, it was in the moment, but still is too.
The possession on our half of the field was fine, and I was pretty content with our first 20-25 minutes here in regard to how we were feeling out that game. But you're 100% right. Orlando was not worried about anything that we were doing. They were compact defensively once we actually, the rare times we crossed midfield, and just daring us to try to do something, to try to get any sort of action going on that attacking third. And we barely even enter that third. Like, we can't even get into the quote unquote red zone, as we call it here in Austin. And it's just like, man, we have to be able to figure out creative ways to generate some chances. And it just hasn't come. And it's a failure on the coaching staff, failure on the players. I just feel stuck, like, in regard to where this team is. Like, we have this, strategy, tactics that we wanted to implement for a long time. And then this roster just does not fit those tactics. And it's like, We can't be having guys who are going to be like, we can't be a possession-based team with dudes who struggle to make basic passes. And then after a while, we resort to those long balls, which essentially feel like a cop-out half the time because they're only working about 40% of the time. And it's just like, well, okay, I can't pass it back to Hedges again. Let's see if we can just get something over the top. And there's no connection there. It hasn't mattered if it's been Rigoni. It hasn't mattered if it's been Obi. It hasn't mattered if it's been Ethan. You know, it's just not working. It's not a high success rate for what we want to do. And man, it's just, it fucking sucks right now. It really fucking sucks.
Yeah, I mean, they're just sitting back. They're daring us to launch those long balls because it's a much less, or it's just much less likely that that's going to be successful for us. Because again, even though I think we certainly upgraded the speed on the wings, bringing Obi in overall, right? In that position group, they're faster than they were last year. There's still a reason man was available in the freaking waiver draft or whatever the hell. I don't even seeing red right now.
It's just like, yeah, you can't even utilize the speed if you're not actually able to get him a ball behind the back line. Like, it just makes him a fast guy out, a track runner.
And with Danny being out, obviously that kind of forced our hand, I think, with having Johan, Alex, and Seba in the middle there. You could have put Owen in, but the way Johan has still been playing overall, I think he deserved that nod. And if you're going to try to grind this out 0-0 and maybe steal a goal, then he's probably that's the selection. But the way we're building up, where Alex was dropping almost in between the center backs, and that did allow Johnny to be a little bit more free up and down that right side, which I think was a good idea on paper. But then we've got Johan just like taking up space, because I do appreciate that Johan, to me, seems to be getting the ball off his foot quickly. Like, that is a directive. That's what he's carrying out. And I think that's what we should try to do, right? Because he is the weak link out there in the buildup, unless I'm missing something, right? And having Alex that far back really just puts Johan in no man's land, where like he can be that connector. But again, it's such a low probability outcome to do that over and over again, where teams are just going to live with that for now. So, and I don't think we'll get there, but I don't think we saw the adjustments this game that we've seen, especially in the home matches. And that was really disappointing.
Yeah. And there's just a giant portion of space from outside the 18 where those defensive mids are and where Seba is trying to get the ball. He's pushed up. Alex routinely was behind Johan in this game in front of the CBs. And I mean, I know you said Johan's the weakest link there. We got a shitload of weak links in regard to trying to, get some offensive buildup going. And to me, I know it's probably a sacrifice that the coaching staff doesn't really want to make, but dropping Seba farther back into space and just at least letting him get the ball makes more sense to me. Like, he just needs more fucking touches. Like, he has to have the ball at his feet, and we can't get it to him. Like, and that's just a basic fucking thing. Like, that's not even asking to be, I'm not even saying like, okay, get the ball and now you go score us a goal, like progress us all the way forward. Just be able to get this man the fucking ball. Just like, we have to allow him to have the ball, and we can't even do that right now.
I know I said I had the least amount of notes on a game for an episode yet, somehow only in the 17th minute here. And this is really the first time, maybe the only time, that Austin in this first half has a sustained buildup of possession and a decent long ball here from Johan to Obrian, and then Obi able to corral it. I thought his first touches last night trended towards more positive results than negative. Again, it's going to continue to be a 50-50 proposition until you get a little more consistent with it. But here in the Orlando half, Johan hits another long ball towards Seba in the box. Robin Janssen gets that down, heads it down towards that top of the box. And Diego Rubio is there, pounces on it, tries a little half volley that goes wide left. But that was the first little bit of bite that Austin showed. It made us, where we were watching with some buddies, like it elicited a reaction. And so that was just a moment, a little short breath of life, but nothing doing.
No, I mean, it's got to be an absolutely perfect strike for us to score a goal there. And it's just, you can't be relying on that for your actual goal scoring opportunities.
Yeah. Real quick,
All right.
I think I said it first in the group that we were watching with on Brad Stuver's goal kicks last night that the Orlando supporter section is yelling, "You suck, asshole," on every goal kick. And now, look, that's not a certain like homophobic chant that you hear in other places, but like it's just like a small tier above it. And like, not that that hurts my feelings by any means. I was just surprised to hear that the first time. And then the second time they do it here in the 24th minute, you go, you're absolutely right. They're saying you suck, asshole. And it just, I was taken aback a little bit that seems to be like the thing that they do there.
Yeah, that's pretty corny.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so definitely not creative.
No,
it doesn't hurt my feelings. It was just, I was just like, oh, wow. I guess I have not watched some of these Orlando matches as closely as I thought I had coming into this one. So then now we're into the 33rd minute here, and Johan takes out Luis Muriel about 10 yards outside of the box, right center of net. Muriel and Ojeda line up over it, and Martin Ojeda ends up ripping a shot that Stuver's able to keep out, but never really gets a handle on it, spills it out for a corner, and luckily Austin was able to clear that corner out. Even with Orlando staying in possession, they end up offside on their next attempt into the box. 37th minute, long ball here from Alex Ring to Hader Obrian, and Obrian, nice flick on near midfield to Galley, who's streaking down that right side. John Gallagher plays in that long cross on the ground, something that we saw more of him as a winger in that first season. And it's towards Rubio. Rubio almost beats Rodrigo Schlegel to the ball. But then when that ball comes loose, Hader Obrian's right there trailing the play, falls right to his feet, and he fires an attempt at the top of the box that blasts into the stands. So again, about every 15 minutes here, Austin, very patient with their defense, still solid at the back, still not great building up into the final third, but every 15 minutes or so, you're getting into a dangerous spot, which again is not the lowest we have seen this team in a half this season. Still not where we want to see, but again, I think up into this point, I'm still feeling okay about maybe being able to grind out a 0-0 draw here.
I mean, for us to have gotten a win in this situation or be in contention for a 1-1 draw or something along those lines, with actually putting the ball in the fucking net, we'd have to just be getting lucky. Like something fortunate would have to happen for us here, because of course at some point in time you're going to get some sort of defensive breakdown or a good bounce or something along the lines where, all right, we've got some good touches here and we actually have a chance for a shot on net. But you know, the ball comes off Obi's foot, and as soon as it came off his foot, it was just like, all right, that's something.
39th minute here. Orlando wins a corner. It's their second at this point of the match, and Ojeda plays it in. And as this ball is going towards the back post, Luis Muriel takes out Stuver. I do not understand. I mean, I understand why, because these officials were terrible. And again, I think we got another officiating crew that was horrendous and still did not affect the outcome of our game. But again, like, and I've seen a couple people commenting on some of the apparently also awful officiating continuing around the league yesterday. The only one I saw was in Colorado, where Maxu gets hit in the head, goes down bleeding from his head. He's down in Houston's box. Houston is able to take that ball, counter up the field, and score the game-winning goal with 30 seconds left, while this guy is down bleeding with a head injury in the box. So again, right here, nowhere near as crazy as that. But this seemed like a very simple call to me that was not made, and Stuver has a right to be upset there. Ultimately, that cross that looked like it might have Olympicoed in off the corner. Guilherme Biru, maybe the most exciting Austin play on the night here, a little like kind of half scorpion clearance to keep it out. But I just don't get how you can't call that. You don't call that foul. That's a very simple call.
It's incredibly simple, and Muriel sets up for it before the corner is even kicked. Literally stands in front of him, puts his hands over his chest like this, like he's just going to stand there like a statue, and you can't fucking do that. And he does it again.
And then he walks under him too.
Yep, and then he does it again later in the game, and it's just like, and then he actually gets called for that one, and it's like, okay, well, the first one was probably worse,
because
he fucking undercut Stuver, and Stuver has all the right in the world to be absolutely pissed. And I thought somebody should have said something more to that ref and been like, hey, man, welcome to the big leagues. Start making some calls here that actually make sense. And like, again, we did not lose this game because of the referees. It's fortunate that we haven't lost a game because of them, just because of how fucking terrible they are. And there's nothing else to say on this other than fuck you, MLS. This is embarrassing. It's embarrassing, man. It's such a bad look.
42nd minute here. Orlando, sustained period of possession. They change the field from left to right. Angulo to Ojeda, on to Dagerdan Thorhalson out there on that right side. And Thorhalson combines multiple times here with Ojeda and Ladero. Not a bad little group of three there to have in the offensive third. Thorhalson ends up firing across towards the back post to a wide open Jack Lynn, the all-time leading MLS Next Pro goal scorer, 38 MLS minutes total coming into the night, gets his first MLS goal. And right here, man, John Gallagher just falls asleep. I deem this as an inexcusable mistake. And, I think it looked from his body language like he knew that one was on him right there. Heinous is near the corner flag that I think it barely keeps him onside here from the angles that Apple showed. And they didn't spend a ton of time on it, but I think that was a good goal in terms of on or offside there. And it changes the game massively right before the half. Because, man, you get into that half 0-0, you get Stuver out of that supporters end. Again, it's not rocket science here, but I think it just changes the game.
Changes the game entirely. And it's great that Johnny realized after the fact that he really fucked up. But brother, we can't have that. We're not good enough to have mental lapses like that. He completely forgets that Lynn is there, just stops marking him, forgets that the back post exists, and just gives up. I mean, he's just right there in front of the net. It's just like,
it's like 5 or 6-2 in terms of guys in the box right there.
Yeah, no, I thought our transition defense was pretty solid. I think like we talked about, they weren't doing a whole lot. Like they really weren't. They were sitting back, trying to hit us on the counter, and routinely we had more guys in the box than they did, and we were getting back transitionally on defense. I thought our defense in the first half was solid up until this point, and then this is just a huge, huge error, a grave mistake, something that cannot happen, particularly if you're an MLS All-Star and one of the most important players on our team. We just can't have this happening, and it does. And right there at that point in time, I was pretty much like, well, that's probably the game.
Yeah.
Because, we said you got to make this ugly, you got to muck it up, but we didn't say give up 23 shots and only take 4 or whatever the stats were at the end of the day. And if you're going to muck it up and make it ugly, then you can't have defensive mental errors like this. It just can't happen, and it's inexcusable. And, as good as our transition defense was, eventually it just felt like they were going to get on the board, and they get on the board here. And to your point that you talked about earlier, adjustments don't really come after this goal. And I don't know if it was concession. I mean, part of it has to do with what we actually have available right now, but sometimes we're going to have to, like, at some point in time, you're going to have to throw caution to the wind and throw the fucking game plan out of the window if this is the situation we continuously find ourselves in, just to hope that anything outside of what we've been doing will work. And we didn't.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, you're obviously in a tough spot with only 4 true first team subs in there that aren't named Stephen Cleveland. And Seba on the minutes limit, right? Mm-hmm. So he's going to have to come out for somebody at some point. But anyway, I mean, we can – what's that?
10 wasn't great either, and partially is because he's not getting the ball, partially because we don't have another 10 to get 10 the fucking ball. But he's still working through some rust, and fortunately this was an away game, so it's not a home loss, But shit, man. We've been talking about growth and this team getting better in some areas and aspects, and this was 2 steps backwards.
Yeah, 56th minute here. Orlando on the front foot just completely now.
Yeah.
Ladero takes a rip from the top of the box. Actually gets blocked by his own teammate. I think it was Muriel in there that just pings off of. Orlando still picks up the rebound, and they find Ojeda, who drags it from right to center at the top of the box. He fires his own shot, teammate doesn't get in the way this time. Stuver able to paw that one out for a corner. And this is where, like you mentioned earlier, foul does go against Luis Muriel on the corner there in the 6th. Then 62nd minute here. Handball called on Johan Valencia about 6 yards outside the box. I think that is the right call in my eyes. Muriel, Ladero, and Ojeda have a little conversation standing over it. Ends up being Nico Ladero ripping it top corner, gets it past Brad Stuver. And after the goal, when we were watching the game live, he's complaining about something, end up seeing the replay, clearly complaining about the 2 Orlando players standing in an offside position, impeding his view of the free kick, which I believe is against the rules. So watching it back today on Sunday, he's complaining to the ref. He's saying, like, look, I can't see the kick because these guys are standing there. And then when the whistle blows, those guys lean even more towards Stuver's line of sight. So I think he has a case here that potentially that should have been looked and maybe even called back for. I think they call that offside if you're impeding that view. Again, I'm not 100% on what that rule is there, but clearly Brad thought he had a case. I'm with him. Although I will say Coach Wolf seemed to kind of brush off the idea that would have been disallowed after the fact. So, I'm not the soccer savant here, but either way, 2-0.
Yeah. And I mean, look, so this is the Orlando was a team that has been struggling all season. They haven't won a game in MLS, and you see them do some shitty different kind of things here to try to generate a goal. You see Luis Muriel standing in front of Bradley Stuver 2 different occasions. The first one doesn't get called. And I said that last week. At some point in time, we also have to put these are the refs. These are who we're going to have. At some point in time, you're going to have to force their hand a little bit and do some shit like this. And they continuously did it. And I mean, a good team goes in there and wins that fucking game because that Orlando team did not look good at all. They still look out of sync on offense. There's plenty of times where Muriel either doesn't have a read on somebody who's trying to get him the ball, or he's holding on to the ball too long and not getting the runs that he wants. And a good team goes in there and wins this game. And, I'm just going to trust that Brad knows what he's talking about in that situation, because immediately you see him being upset. We're talking to some guys there, our buddy Gmo, and trying to get some some clarity from him on what could have been going on. He said potentially that the ref didn't get Brad to get time to get set, but then you see these 2 dudes offsides, and then they go further and progress further with it. And again, the ref didn't cost us the game, but it's just the contrast between what some other teams are doing to try to make the best of the situation that we're stuck in with these shit refs, and the fact that we're not.
Yeah. Well, and because every team, we can't just sit here. No team can sit here and whine about the official situation because all 29 teams have to deal with it.
Exactly. And that you have to try to turn it into something positive. And they did stuff like that. I don't know if that's a veteran cheeky move by Luis Muriel to try to pin the keeper in his own net, or if this offside situation is something that they talked about, planned on. But it's just contrasting between what other coaching staffs are doing to try to generate, because this is a team that had 2 goals on the season, man. They had 2 goals in the season, and it was from the same dude who wasn't even playing.
Yep. 66th minute here. Driussi drops in real deep to get a touch near the back line, just inside the Austin half. And right here plays one of the better, if not the best, long ball of the night to Finley coming down the right side. And Finley gets a decent cross in, but it goes over Rubio's head to the back post where nobody is there. And so on the broadcast, they're saying, if that cross comes in low, maybe Diego Rubio gets a play on it. And that's maybe the case. But, we've also, in that moment, got to have down 2-0. Got to have more bodies flying into dangerous positions, and we just don't. And part of that is because 10 has to be the one firing that first fucking pass from midfield.
And it sucks that he's probably the only dude I really trust making that ball. And Alex's chances when he does it,
I'll say it used to be 8 for me too, but it's not this year so far.
Not been this year. It has not been. It's either, he kicks 3 or 4 balls just fucking out of bounds.
Yeah. Well, and then 69th minute here, we get our first 2 changes, which is Rigoni in for Obrian and Wolf in for Driussi. And I know Seba has to come off, right? So I'm not. We can't say don't take him off. He probably played a little bit longer. He played 69 minutes. Probably played a little bit longer than they intended.
I wanted him to get off as fast as possible at that point. Game's over.
After the second goal, yeah.
Yeah, I'd just get him off the field at that point. The game's over. We haven't shown any sort of fight, any sort of threatening, opportunities. So just get him out of there because, we got to hold on to what we can.
Yeah. I think after we come out of the half down 1-0, right before the half, to me, that just changes the calculus. And maybe the equation for the coaching staff was because we only have these 4 guys and we know Seba has to come out, so one of them has to go in for him. And then we just have very limited flexibility at best. After that, maybe they're just not prioritizing making adjustments like these. But I don't know, man, Owen for Johan would have felt pretty good for me in terms of us, we're trying to get one back and salvage a point here on the road from, again, going up against a team that Orlando did not, and we didn't make them look great.
No.
They just took advantage of some of their opportunities, and they had a lot more than we did.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, man, turning Johan Valencia into somebody who can, Owen Wolf's not our best, he's not our savior here, but he's going to be much better for our offensive buildup, at least our chances there, than continuing to have Johan sit back there. Whether he's next to Alex or Seba dropping in, it's still Johan. And when we need a goal, I would have loved to see, and again, I get it if the plan changed where it's well, man, let's not burn these guys out in a game where we don't have enough options. We're behind the 8 ball, yada, yada. I would just, as a fan, I would have been happier if I saw the adjustment come in where it's let's go, let's push for this goal, right? Because Orlando's they're not running down our throats like we've seen a team like LAFC in the past trying to put up 4 or 5 on you, right? They weren't completely sitting back, but again, it just didn't seem like that type of threat where if we take Johan off, all of a sudden this game gets out of hand. So I don't know. That's one thing I would have liked to see. And I would have overall just liked to see the changes come a little bit sooner because hindsight's always 2020, right? If Ladero doesn't and credit to him, which is something I didn't mention, that was still a pretty damn good shot that Brad may not have got to if his line of sight was clear. But again, I just think when you go down right before the half, I just think to me that accelerates when I want to make those changes.
I mean, bro, Johan is essentially acting as a fifth defender.
Yeah.
He's not even so it's when we're down 1-0 and you're trying to salvage a point there, losing 4-0, losing 2-0, it's still a loss, it's still something that we're just going to have to take the fact that we didn't secure a single point here. So I would have liked to have seen some changes as well. I don't even really know what else you can do because, again, I still thought we had to get Seba off the pitch at the time that we did or even before the time that we did. And we probably pushed him as far as we could in that game. And, it's just very clear that there is a huge lack of offensive options on this team.
Yeah, not a ton in the notes the rest of the way here, man. We got those 2 changes. Then we do see in the 73rd minute, Felipe in for the goal scorer, Lynn. So that wasn't great for us. It's not going to get easier with Felipe coming and fucking around the last 20. 79th minute, we get our final 2 changes with Jimenez in for Biru and Zardes in for Rubio. And then 80th minute, a yellow card to Kyle Smith, who took down Owen Wolf as he was about to break a line and potentially create a chance there on the break on that free kick. Frustrating. And
oh my
I guess maybe a little bit less frustrating to me thinking about so this free kick, okay, it goes back slightly backwards from left to right to Gallagher. He swings it to Johan, who swings it back to Ring on the left. And he puts it into the box. Ends up going right to Steidehar. Not a threat. I think the appearance of how he goes backwards on that when we already have guys on the line in the box ready to create a chance. I understand the frustration there. I've also seen, and again, it's fucking next pro level, so it's not a 1-to-1, but I've seen these creative type of set plays from Jason Grubb at the FCTO level. We've seen flashes of it at the first team level to start this season. I understand that there's more to it than meets the eye there. because I've seen that work from this coach, right, in Coach Grubb. The appearance of passing laterally at best and slightly backwards in reality is not great at that point of the match. So it was very frustrating in the moment. But again, I understand what they're trying to do there. I don't blame anybody for looking at that and being like, what the hell?
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to create some sort of defensive like imbalance, some sort of misstep by their defenders. But I mean, why would they be coming out to like go after that ball? Like, they're still just going to be man marked up there at the 18 and everything. And again, it's just something that gets magnified when you suck and you're losing. Like it's under the microscope. And when you're not generating chances, you try to get a little creative, and the success rate on those aren't super high anyway. But I know that there was probably a large collective groan from most of the fans. I know that I was upset in the moment for sure. But it's we're just bad. We're not a good team right now.
88th minute, Halliday comes in for Ojeda, and then in the 90th minute, Heinz plays a long ball to Rigoni, and Steinahart comes 6 yards outside his area, takes him out. Schlegel hits him too and fouls. So Rigoni gets fouled twice. No foul is called, which is absolutely ridiculous. And I don't understand how that's not a card on the keeper. Completely unnecessary coming out there. And again, that's not going to change the game. That's not going to give us a goal or even a shot on goal, which we don't have yet to this point, 90 fucking minutes in. But like, how is that not the game is 2-0. It's not like you giving this foul correctly, official, is going to change anything. The fact that the whistle wasn't blown there, just like that one play, is just a fucking microcosm of the huge issue. Again, I know we're a broken record with this, but with the shitstorm that this league has brought on itself and PRO by not getting a deal done with the officials, like, I know we've talked about it, and I know there's much better outlets that know more about this topic than we do, but holy shit, was that just a bad topping to the shit Sunday that was last night.
Yep. I mean, I've never felt worse for Rigoni, because he gets absolutely hammered, and Steinahart is he was just fucking bored because he didn't have anything to do for 90 minutes.
Let me get a touch here.
All right, let me go ahead and just blast somebody here. But that's a blatant card.
Yeah.
You're telling me both of those defenders got the ball and didn't make contact with Rigoni in that situation leading up to, and when Rigoni's trying to hit the fucking, absolutely absurd. And we can go off on tangents and what ifs or whatever, but then at least you have a set piece with a chance to do something that we could have at least grasp onto and squeeze the absolute life out of. Like, well, you remember in the 89th minute when we did have a pretty solid set piece there. Just fucking inexcusable, man. Like, we suck. The refs suck. That's all there really is to it.
Last minute of stoppage here. Kachefsi and Mohammedan for Ladero and Muriel. So they get their standing O coming off the pitch. Then off that restart, Rigoni with maybe the most non-threatening shot on goal I've ever seen. It just kind of dribbles to Steinahart, and the final whistle comes shortly thereafter. So once it's all said and done, 22 shots to 3 in favor of Orlando City, 8 shots on target to 1. And that one, again, very generous. 0 big chances for Austin, 6 corners to 0 in favor of Orlando. No shots inside the box for Austin. 1.87 XG for Orlando to 0.16 for Austin. Your thoughts?
Putrid, disgusting, heinous, gross, vomit inducing, foul, unkempt, disgusting, just fucking. And we went in on the club for the first half of Minnesota, and that was 100% an effort thing. This is a collective failure by every single group that is associated with this organization. The game plan was not right. The strategy was not right. Whatever it wasn't fucking executed properly. And you get burned on a terrible defensive mental lapse and a really good strike by Ladero. And that's it, man. And like you said, 1 shot on net, get the fuck out of here. That's a back pass. We just passed the ball to that guy so he could at least get his hands on it. I mean, it fucking absolutely awful. It was such a difficult game to watch, to sit through. We have no connectivity. we have nothing to build on from this game outside of the fact that I thought Heinous looked good. I thought that he was very serviceable in his time because obviously this is a complete unknown for me. I haven't seen the man play before. So like I was a little worried, obviously, with the way that Julio and Hedges have been pairing well together and like holding down the defensive unit. I thought Heinous came in and was much more serviceable than most of the guys who started this game. And, you know, now you're looking at Frisco at home, man, and a chance to extend our incredible record of 1 win in our last 20 games or what have you. And it's just, there's not much that you can sell the fans on at this point right now. There's really not.
I agree. I'm with you on Heinous. I thought that was probably the biggest positive of last night is that our CB4 is MLS quality.
Mm-hmm.
And that's huge.
Yeah,
that is a big development in a team that has little to no depth. I think we can say now, again, that depth is already being tested with Vicenen injury, Kolmanic injury, Julio helping Costa Rica qualify for the summer, right? So we're going to miss him in the summer now too for some games.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I thought that was a good point by you. I thought Heinous was very, very solid, and it makes me feel a little bit better about that back line.
I mean, our two best players are 10 and Diego Rubio, and we couldn't even get either of them the ball. We couldn't even do it.
Well, let me throw some more stats at you, and I don't think this is going to make you feel any better, but I think they are pretty pertinent to the first 5 games of the season, right? We're 15% of the way through the season now. Still very early. Still getting to a point also where we can start to have some, I think, more concrete takeaways about the sample size we've been given. Austin has faced the most shots on target in the league with 34. Austin themselves have 8 shots on target through their 5 matches played. That is 5 shots on target less than the next lowest team, Nashville, with 13. 8 teams have only played 4 matches, and they all have between 14 and 21 shots on target. Again, Austin with 8. Stuver has the 3rd highest save percentage in the league, leading to a goals against per 90 number of 1 flat, 1 goal against per 90 through 5 matches. That is tied for 4th best in the league. Austin, last in the league with 3.4 expected goals. The 3 teams directly above them in that expected goals chart have played 1 less match. Austin has the least amount of progressive carries among teams with 5 or more matches played. Austin has the least amount of progressive passes among teams with 5 or more matches played. Austin has 55 total shot creating actions through 5 matches, 17 less than the next lowest team among those with 5 or more matches played. They're also behind every team that has played at least 4 matches. Their shot creating actions per 90 are 3.4 less than the next lowest team in MLS. Austin has the 2nd lowest shot on target percentage at 25%, only above RSL, who played 1 match in a fucking blizzard. Austin has the lowest shots on target per 90, 0.6 shot on target per 90 than the next lowest, and 1.8 less than the 27th ranked team in Chicago. So I will tell you, there is one positive out of all of those, and that is that Brad Stuver is the closest thing since Sebastian Driussi in 2022 that we have had to an MVP candidate, because he is keeping this team from 100% being the spoon favorite now.
Yeah, not just the spoon favorite, but just be absolutely getting embarrassed every single time we go out there on the pitch. I mean, those numbers they speak for themselves, and sometimes facts and numbers and sample sizes, they can all be a bit misleading, but when you pair it with having watched every single minute, every single second of every single game up until this point, it's very clear that those numbers are 100% truthful, accurate in their description of how shit this team has been on the offensive side of the ball and how good Bradley Scott Stuver has been in net for us, despite the fact that he is just getting absolutely pelted routinely. And it's just a very, very ugly situation, and we had a conversation before this, and we're talking about Wolf and the staff, and it's like, in almost every other situation, the man is fired. He's gone.
Mm-hmm.
He's lost his job. And, you know, I don't know if Roto has had a in-depth conversation with Josh about the fact that, hey, brother, you got to hold on for as long as you can until we get some people here. But again, those people aren't showing up within the next week or so. So something has to change. Something has to give. I still am of the mindset that I don't give a shit who's coaching this team. I don't know what you're going to be getting out of them. That could be super positive at this point in time. And that's not excusing Josh for some of the inexcusable and indefensible things that he's done on his behalf. And I know you're excited to get in. Well, maybe not excited, but I know you have some opinions on the press conference, and I think that they're quite fair. And, you know, I think that Josh is in a bit of a situation where he's lucky because we have this rebuild thing to fall back on. We have Roto behind the scenes in the kitchen trying to get stuff done, but still at the same time, ultimately this falls on your head, brother. And like more often than not, his head would have been chopped off by now, you know, figuratively speaking.
Right.
Don't want to get some people too excited.
Yeah, so I guess we can just talk. I wanted to read 2 longer passages of responses from Josh Wolf at last night's press conference. Because we try to get graphics out, whether it's midweek media availability, post-match, what have you, and get some of the more pertinent quotes out there on our social media accounts. But I listened to that last night when I got home. There wasn't I couldn't find just a part. Like they would be the ones I wanted to talk about were way too long, so I'll recite them here. Really, just these 2 long paragraphs. The first one, he said, "We have to be more aware of what we're trying to do in the final third and live in the space a little bit longer. We have taken some precautions because we don't have a full complement of guys. We don't have the positions maybe occupied by the players that can do some of the things that we want. So we're taking a more practical approach. We don't build out of the back quite as much. Having Brendan, who's new, and certainly with Matt, who's probably not as comfortable, we have to be aware of it. Biru is the same. So we can't do all of the things that we typically do. We got to try to keep getting these guys on board. They arrived late in the preseason and were light on numbers to begin with. But that's part of why we train it to go out and do it. And in difficult moments, you got to hang in there and be brave enough to play. And we'll keep pushing these ideas and continue to get better. When we have a full complement of players, I think we'll have a better version. But tonight, the whole group, we need to be better. There's no doubt about it." So just a couple things from that answer for me. Number one, obviously he's right identifying that we need to up the quality of our possession, our decision-making in the final third. That's also just as much on the coaching staff. And I kind of want to, and maybe it's not fair, I kind of want to loop Roto in on this, because if they are communicating every day, which is something we already expected was happening, but is confirmed later on in the press conference by Wolf, then you're getting some ideas, some feedback from Roto. Because if you're not, then what the fuck are y'all talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, the roster situation doesn't change that much day to day. Like, so unless you're just updating on like, here's what our scouts are saying about X, Y, or Z guy, then like, I imagine you guys are having conversations about how to tweak this stuff until you do, as you say, get the players in there that you really want. So.
And just like, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
All you have to say at the end of that to make it nice is it starts with me.
Yeah,
that's
dude,
it. That's all you have to say.
You can make this so much easier on yourself if you just break a little bit from this fucking script that you have in your head, that you have to continue to roll out these same answers and these same phrases about putting guys in the space and live there a little bit longer. It's like, and fucking Phil, I think, is the one who asked the question. And he tees it up for him.
Softball.
All you have to do. And the only time I've ever heard him say that this is on me was at Violette, or it wasn't even at Violette because it's in the fucking Dominican. But like, once is not enough, especially for how bad this run of form is. Because whether you want to extend it back to last season or not, which I think we should, again, you have to be able to also acknowledge that 2024 is a different team, a different season, a different iteration of this roster, but it's the same coach, right? And so it's totally fair to go back and look and say, hey, in the one of the last 16 league matches we've won, if you don't win this Saturday, you've gone a full MLS, half of an MLS season with one fucking win. And like you said earlier, and we're far from the first people to point this out, Adrian Healy, who had a record tweet last night, just tweeting from Vietnam, 37, 54, and 24. Look, man, you any other place, you're gone.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, you're lucky. You've been given this gift that this team, for whatever reason, they have decided to continue with Josh Wolf, right? You have been given this opportunity, and you have to do better than what it was in the first half against Minnesota, and you have to do better than what it was last night.
Yep.
We know that you guys are shorthanded. We know you got international duty. We got to see more, like we saw, in my opinion, from the 3 home matches. Or not even, I think I could loop Minnesota in there because the second half was better than the first half, based on adjustments that the coaching staff made, repositioning guys and the like, making some subs in St. Louis or Philadelphia, what have you. We just didn't see that last night. And that takes me back to the latter third of last season, where we did not see a lot of adjustments, or at least adjustments that worked, where I think we've seen some of that this season. And we've seen the willingness to change the starting lineup. And we've seen the willingness to change the tactics to try to be, as he put it, right, taking some more precautions in the way that they play. But still, man, again, there has to be, if you're going to say, anyways, you say what you got to say. We'll talk about his next response, because now I'm bleeding into the next things that he says.
I mean, that's really that's all I have to say. Is all you have to say to add on to the end of that is it starts with me and starts with my staff, and then you can live with it somewhat because there is a clear lack of talent on this team, but it's your job to maximize the talent of the roster. And like you said, Phil really lobbed it up for him. He had a chance to just knock that one out of the park.
Just
and I don't know
words, bro. Just say the words.
And I don't know if it's been something where he is being so defensive at this point, with his position, because there have been outrageous calls for his head, and he's kind of locked into this back up against the wall kind of mode. But you can't dictate the way you're answering those questions based on a group of people yelling or screaming or wanting you to be fired. You got to do your job, man. And your job is to fucking get the most out of the players that we have here right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, then he says, I can't shape the ideas for fans, but I think there's a level of expectation with the group that we have. We're in a rebuild, which I think is the first time that anybody has come out and said that outright. Roto obviously hints at it. We know where we're at, if you've been paying attention, but this is the first time he has 100% brought out that crutch, fucking strapped the training wheels on the bike and said, we're in a rebuild. He says, I think if we look back 14 or 15 months, we have 18 to 19 new players. Last year, we had 10 players leave. We brought in 4 field players this year, so we got to be realistic with what we're doing. Obviously, we want to win every single game. I don't think any team shows up not wanting to win. We've been more than competitive in these games. We could have more points. We had the lead against St. Louis and Philly at home. These were 2 of the best teams in the league last year. We have a group that's more than able to compete and win games this year, but the margins are so thin. We have to be near perfect, We have to be near perfect with what we have right now, and I think Roto, there are things that are possibly coming in the summer. There may be other things beyond what we've talked about already, but we have to work in a way, being mindful of what we have, and we've tried to get a little bit lower on the field. We have a little bit of an older group athletically on the back line. We have to take some onus and try to protect ourselves and know, and that's what we've tried to do a little bit in these first 4 or 5 games of the season, knowing who we were playing, where we were playing, and as we get our guys back, I think Seba getting up to speed more than he was tonight. I think that'll only help him. The 60 minutes will really help him. Then hopefully Julio and Pepe come back into the equation. We get Leo and Z at some point, but we have to keep pushing forward. We have to keep improving. It's certainly not a panic from the coaches. And Roto, we talk about these things pretty candidly. So Look, y'all can talk about those things candidly. I hope you do. I'm glad you say you do, because that's that's what you should be doing. But man, I am overall from those two passages, and then he goes on to say, in response to a question from Jorge, he says, I have conversations with Roto every day. That's part of our relationship. Been talking about the group and the planning, and we'll always communicate. I'm getting tired of not the leaning on the shorthanded roster, because that's going to be valid until we bring more guys in. That's not an excuse for some of these games we've seen, right? Particularly last night, particularly the first half against Minnesota. And I'm tired on March 23rd, I'm tired of leaning on guys got here late in the preseason. Mm-hmm. You've been training now. Even if you got here the day the season fucking started, it's been a month. And you've been in training every day. These guys that he's bringing up. You've been with the team on all the trips. And you played in the games. Yeah. So hear that Matt Hedges, who was acquired in July, he's not comfortable. If he's not comfortable with it, then that is a huge indictment of your coaching. Mm-hmm. So what are we talking about with that, man? We got to put those excuses in the preseason.
Yep.
And maybe the first 2-3 games. But man, this is game 5 now. We are more than a month into the season. So I am done hearing about guys and how late they got here. Unless a guy showed up literally 2 weeks ago, which is none of these guys.
Nope. And Hedges and Cascante and the Hedges and Heinous pairing have been good. Like, that's been something that's actually been good about this unit. And it's just like, I'm with you there, man. There has been more than enough time. And again, we've talked about this shit since last season. Mm-hmm. Our tactics are not some sort of super advanced strategy that you have to like study for 2.5 seasons to actually understand and comprehend. And in that same presser, you talked about being more practical and a little more simpler. So like, why is it that we're still uncomfortable with certain things that we're doing? So, again, all of these things get inflamed and are put under the microscope when you can't win a fucking game, which is where we're at right now. And we just got to find a way to generate some chances. And look, man, I hope, again, like you said, I hope he's having candid discussions with Roto about this. And I hope that Roto has some suggestions from his tenured career on the sidelines with really successful clubs on like little tweaks that we can make. We don't have to overhaul this whole fucking thing in regard to how we want to play if it's out of the back with possession and things like that, which I thought was still very solid for the defensive unit. I thought our possession, like, we didn't look scared. We haven't had those just like mind-blowing turnovers that we've experienced in years past with this team. It's just the fact that as soon as we cross half field, everything shuts down. Like, we just become this stagnant, predictable, unthreatening, and Orlando did not even take us seriously on that side of the ball, man. Like, they were just waiting for us to essentially either kick it out of bounds or get tired with what we were trying to do. So I'm with you there, man. There's got to be a level of accountability at every single, like, you got to have like same thing I talked about with Rigoni. Like, if things aren't going well and you're a player who's struggling, you have to have some sort of accountability at a personal level. Like, forget the team, forget the sport you're playing, forget the league that you're in. This is what you do. This is what you've trained your whole life to do. Have a little respect for what you do. And the coaching staff needs to hear that as well. They have to have some sort of like personal integrity about the type of product we're putting out there on the field. And then when you see a result like this and then hear those questions, it's clear that that's not the case.
Last thing here, Seba did get on the mic or on the Zoom last night to talk to the press after Coach Wolf, and I just wanted to talk about one answer he said, because at the end of the end of the conference, rather, Phil just said, like, what can you offer to fans here as some sort of hope, right? The direction of this team and any sort of positivity. And he said, as the captain, I'm really sorry. I do apologize because I know that the fans make a lot of sacrifices at home and even away games, the away games that they do go to. And I hope that we get those 3 points soon so we can make them happy because they're really important to us. It's been really difficult for us as a team, but we will have a derby this weekend and hopefully we'll get that win that we really need. So shout out to Phil once again, Verde all day. Go subscribe to Phil. And, I think that is one of the better things that I've heard Sebas say, even though, he's saying it in his typical, like, eyes down, kind of quiet manner. And he wanted to get out of that, even though it's online in front of a screen, wanted to get out of that press conference so quick. But this is where, when we stop recording this episode and we go into our week here, that is where I'm going to be, is we have, fucking Dallas coming on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
We're in our house, right? We're going to have Julio back. We're going to have Danny back. And we got to get this fucking win to get Copa Tejas started off on the right foot. Because we got 6 of those matches this year instead of just 4 that count towards Copa Tejas. And we don't just need a win in Copa Tejas, we need a win overall. So huge match coming up next weekend. And, it's as hard as it is to say with a straight face right now, I am looking forward to that because the pressure is on. And I want to see our guys respond, not just because a rival is coming in, but there's no doubt that gives it a little extra kick, as Seba admits there.
And shit, man, any extra kick that we can take, we will use it. Any sort of extra motivation, any sort of extra juice that we can take, is going to be fantastic for us because, like you said, there's really nothing to look at from this game to build on. And, you beat Dallas, you beat Frisco. It changes a lot of things. Like, winning can also gloss over a lot of your shitty issues if you continue to win. But I'm not saying that that's just going to wipe this slate clean for this team. We just have to get something. Like, I know that we've been holding on to, this is something we did better and we can grow from here. And like, this is something that we did better and we can continue to put this into our game plan and strategy. But at some point in time, you just have to get a win. Like, you have to. And then that could give you something to actually build off of. So I'm absolutely ready to put this game behind us. It was horrible on all fronts. Everybody sucked except Bradley Scott Stuver. And it is bad. And, to give the fans something to hold on to, you just got to hold on to the fact that this is the club that you're rooting for. This is your team. And we're in it right now. We're in the shit. And there's only one way out of it. And that's through it. And the games aren't going to stop. We can't just pack it in and say, season's over. We'll see you again in the summer transfer window. We got to get through these games. So I do like his response there in regard to, we have a derby match coming up here. We have a little extra motivation. And I hope those guys really ride that because they're going to want to come in and fucking keep us down where we are and just, throw a little more dirt on the collective grave that has already started to begin being dug here.
Yep. Yeah. And we look, as fans of the majority of teams, again, unless you're front running a Bayern Munich or a Real Madrid, a Barcelona, a Man City, what have you, like most teams will go through down periods, right? And for a lot of them, sustained periods of not being very good. That's not the standard we should hold this club to as fans, but we're in a down period right now. We're in a rebuild. Hopefully that is kickstarted here in the summer in a big way. And I still maintain, that I, as a fan right now, expect this team to be competing for a top four spot in the West next season. Next season, because we've seen teams turn it around that fast. Cincinnati, Spoon, 2-3 times in a row?
Yeah.
And they're in the playoffs the next year. I think they were hosting a match. They were no lower than a 5 seed in 2022, and then Supporter Shield last year. So I still think that is the standard. That's the standard I'm holding this team to, and it's going to feel, whether it's 2025 or beyond, or hell, later this season, if you clinch a playoff spot, I will feel good about that relative to where this team is now and what everybody's expectations were. And it's going to feel that much fucking better because I went through the bad times with this team and continued to support.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody, and we will be back on Wednesday as long as you're sticking with the North End podcast through the down times of Austin FC. Back on Wednesday previewing the FC Dallas match. We've also got Copita Tejas action in Next Pro. FCito taking on Dynados on Thursday. We will preview that match. We'll have a best keeper in the world update, the nonsense, and everything else in the Austin FC universe that happens between now and then. Enjoy the beginning of your week, everybody, and we'll see you back here on Wednesday for another episode of the North End podcast. Until then, easy And I'm Zach. Vamos Austin FC, everybody. Goodbye.